The year is 2025, but the calendar on your wall reads differently. It says 2778 AUC, ab urbe condita, from the founding of the city. Rome never died. The empire that history says collapsed 15 centuries ago still stands, and its eagles cast shadows across every continent. You step outside, and the streets hum with Latin. Not the dead language of textbooks, but a living tongue evolved, mixed with 1,000 dialects spoken by billions. The architecture around you blends ancient columns with steel and glass, aqueducts carrying fibre-optic cables alongside water. This is not our world. This is the world that could have been. In our timeline, Rome fell in 476 AD, when a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the last emperor. The Western Empire crumbled into feudal chaos. Europe entered the Dark Ages. But imagine if that moment never came. Imagine if one decision, one battle, one plague stopped just short of destroying everything. What if Rome adapted instead of breaking? What if the empire learned to bend before it could shatter? The divergence happens earlier than you think. It's 410 AD, and the Visigoth king Alaric stands at the gates of Rome. In our history, he sacks the city, humiliating the Eternal Empire, beginning its slow unravelling. But in this timeline, something changes. The emperor offers more than gold. He offers partnership. The Gothic warriors are not bribed to leave. They are invited to stay, not as invaders, but as federates, as citizens, as Romans. Alaric becomes a consul. His people are given land, rights, a voice in the Senate. The empire doesn't resist the migrations, it absorbs them. Germanic strength flows into Roman structure. Instead of collision, there is fusion. Over the next century, this pattern repeats. Huns, Vandals, Franks, they all knock at the door, and Rome opens it. The legions diversify. The Senate expands. Latin mixes with Germanic tongues, creating new hybrid languages that will one day span the globe. The empire stops being a single ethnicity defending a border and becomes an idea, a system, a citizenship that anyone can claim. And so, it does not fall, it transforms. By 600 AD, the empire has stabilized in a way our history never saw. Constantinople and Rome share power, two capitals, two halves of one vast organism. The infrastructure never collapses. Roads stay maintained. Aqueducts keep flowing. Libraries remain open. The knowledge of Greece and Rome does not vanish into monastery shadows. There is no dark age because the light never goes out. Mathematics, engineering, medicine, they all continue advancing in an unbroken line. The Islamic Golden Age still happens, but differently. When Muslim armies explode out of Arabia in the 7th century, they do not conquer a fractured wasteland of petty kingdoms. They crash against the organized might of Rome. Battles rage across North Africa and the Middle East, but the empire holds. A new border forms, not of conquest, but of coexistence. Trade routes thrive. Roman engineers study Arabic astronomy. Muslim scholars translate Roman texts. Two civilizations push each other forward instead of into darkness. By the year 1000, Rome is unrecognizable from its ancient form, but unmistakably continuous. The Senate still meets, though now it includes representatives from Britannia, Germania, Hispania, and Africa. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, has lasted a millennium. There are no feudal lords carving Europe into a patchwork of violence. There is law, centralized law, stretching from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. And because the system survives, so does innovation. Printing arrives earlier. Without a fragmented Europe, knowledge spreads faster. By 1200, books are common, not rare. Literacy climbs. The scientific method emerges not in isolated pockets, but across the empire's vast network of universities. What we call the Renaissance never needs to happen, because classical learning never disappeared. There is no rebirth, only continuous birth. But empires, even immortal ones, carry weight. By 1400, Rome is straining. It has grown too large, too complex. Corruption festers in the Senate. Provinces demand autonomy. The economy buckles under the cost of administration. Rebellions flicker at the edges. The empire faces a choice: tighten its grip or loosen its hold. It chooses the latter. It federalizes. Power is devolved to regional governors, local councils, semi-autonomous territories. Rome becomes less a dictatorship and more a framework, a commonwealth. The eagle remains, but it no longer clutches everything in its talons. The Industrial Revolution, when it comes, is not born in isolated England, but across the empire's interconnected workshops. Steam engines emerge in Milan and Alexandria simultaneously. Factories rise in Londinium and Carthage. The rail network follows old Roman roads, upgraded, expanded, electrified. By 1850, the empire is a technological giant, but it is also an ideological battleground. Enlightenment philosophers question the very structure that has endured for nearly 2,000 years. Democracy, they whisper, not just republicanism. True equality, not just citizenship. The Senate resists, then compromises, then transforms. The empire survives by evolving, again. The 20th century is the ultimate test. Two great wars consume our timeline, born from nationalism, from borders, from the chaos of a fractured Europe. But in this world, there is no such fracture. There is Rome, and yet, that does not mean there is peace. Internal factions explode into civil war. Socialists clash with traditionalists. Colonies in Asia and Africa, long held under Roman dominion, demand independence. The empire, always adaptive, grants it, not out of kindness, but necessity. A new Roman Commonwealth forms, a web of allied nations bound by shared infrastructure, shared language, shared history. The eagle becomes a symbol, not a chains. By the 21st century, Rome is not an empire in the ancient sense. It is a civilization, a cultural gravity well around which the world orbits. Latin-descended languages are spoken by half the planet. Roman law forms the basis of international courts. The old institutions, the Senate, the consulship, they still exist, transformed into something unrecognizable, yet somehow continuous. Technology has advanced at a different pace, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Space exploration begins earlier because centralized funding never fractures. But artificial intelligence arrives later because a unified system moves cautiously. And you, standing in this alternate 2025, look up at the sky. The moon base flies a flag with an eagle and the letters SPQR. Mars colonies are being planned not by corporations but by the Department of Worlds, a Roman ministry older than most nations in our timeline. History, you realize, is not a river with one course. It is an ocean, and we sailed only one route among infinite others. But here is the question that haunts this world. Is it better? Rome never fell, but did humanity rise higher, or simply stay chained longer? The continuity prevented Dark Ages, yes, but did it also prevent the chaotic creativity that comes from collapse and rebuilding? In our timeline, the fall of Rome led to 1,000 experiments, 1,000 cultures blooming in the ruins. In this timeline, there is order, progress, stability, but there is also uniformity. The eagle's shadow is long. You walk through the streets of New Rome and you see efficiency, clean energy, advanced medicine, low crime. But you also see monuments to emperors 2,000 years dead, traditions maintained out of inertia, a society that venerates its past so much it struggles to imagine a radically different future. The empire never fell, but did it trap itself in amber? And then you remember something. In our timeline, Rome did fall, and from its ashes came nations that would abolish slavery, invent human rights, land on the moon, and connect the entire world. The chaos was terrible, but it was also liberating. Would continuous Rome have done the same? Or would slavery have persisted under Latin names, justified by centuries of law? Would democracy have flourished, or would republicanism have frozen into oligarchy? The answer is unknowable, and that is the beauty and terror of alternate history. Every choice saves something and destroys something else. Rome's survival is a gift and a curse. The world is richer in some ways, poorer in others. And as you stand in this strange, familiar, impossible place, you realize the deepest truth. History is not destiny. The fall of Rome was not inevitable, and neither is anything else. Every moment is a crossroads, every decision a universe splitting. The empire never fell, but perhaps it should have. Or perhaps its survival was the greatest triumph of human adaptability. You will never know for certain. And that uncertainty, that endless what-if, is what makes history the most compelling story ever told. The eagles fly on, and somewhere in another world they never did.